to God, and on earth peace, goodwill among men.
Hello. In the previous episodes where I've talked about happiness and pain and numbness, we came upon the topic of fear. Fear is extremely important to understand as far as your spiritual development is concerned. If you don't have a handle on your fears, really you'll never get anywhere as far as any type of development. In fact, maturity, going from childhood to adulthood, is really about overcoming fears, especially as teenagers. They're going through an enormous number of fears and terrors and embarrassments and all of that. And it is going through those things that leads one to maturity. The person stays paranoid, stays locked up in their fears, well, they don't got much going for them. So, let's begin with examining where fears come from and what we do to cope with them and how we get ourselves into trouble. This is what is very often referred to in the church as the 7 deadly sins. At least that's the byproducts of fear, which is what I would discuss. For the purposes of the Orthodox Church, we refer to them usually as the passions. The passions are a form of suffering. That's what we talk about, the passion of Christ. It's his suffering. It's not that he was tormented with his own personal sins. But for us, we suffer with certain longings that are unnatural for us that come out of our fears. So, where does fear start? Very simple, 2 little words. I will try to write them big enough so that they can be seen on your computer screen. No God. That is where all fear begins, is that we do not believe that there is a God. We are not born aware of God. We don't pop out of the womb singing psalms and whatnot. We are, in fact, born not knowing Him, and we need to learn about Him, and that'll come up later. So, when we experience the world without a sense of God, the first thing that comes about when we experience the universe, the world that we're in, and the things that come out of it, we're going to experience fear, because we don't have an idea of being protected. Fear is that sense that I am up against everything and everyone. So when we experience fear, we can do one of 2 things. One is we can run and hide under the pew or under the bed or under the chair, wherever you happen to be. Or the second thing is and this is the very much more the common response to fear, is that we try to talk ourselves out of it. This is called pride. Pride says, I can overcome. I can take care of this. I can overcome any obstacle that comes my way. I am good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. This is where pride comes in. Pride tells us that we are all by ourselves, but it's okay. We'll get what we need to survive. Pride gives us a sense of entitlement over things and people and places. Now, pride breaks down 2 different ways. Let's go with the first way here, and that is lust. Now, you may wonder, what do I mean by that? Lust is not just about sexuality, but it is about using other people for our personal benefit, be that for our sexual desires or manipulating others and controlling them, putting guilt trips on them to get your way. Anytime you are getting a benefit from another person without regard for them, that is a type of lust. It starts off in a very crude way of sexuality, but it can go out in many different ways. It involves lying and cheating and playing head games with people. Now, lust then also breaks down into 2 other categories here. And the first one is sloth, which is a fancy word for laziness. Sloth says, whereas here there's a lot of active manipulation, sloth says, I'm just going to hang back and let somebody else do the dishes. I think we've all encountered that before. Sloth is where we just allow other people to fill in for us. The other form of manipulation here is gluttony. And gluttony is not the use of people, it is the use of things. Make that look a little less like a C. Gluttony is where we are using objects to fill those cravings, those needs within us that come about actually through our fears. Remember, let's look at the chain here. We fear, therefore we try to talk ourselves into having a sense of entitlement. We want, and eventually that desire leads to the use of, let's say, ice cream or alcohol or drugs. Here is abandoning our relationships and our sense of duty within them. So these are the manipulative passions. Now, let's come over here. Let's assume that you want from people and you can't get from them. What do you experience? Why, it's our old friend, envy. Envy is people have something we want and we hate them for it and we set out to destroy them. And envy also has... envy is a horrible sin because we look at what other people have and we hate. We're not happy with ourselves. We see ourselves as being inadequate. We see what other people have as being more. And that drives us two different ways. One of them is greed. Greed is a form of envy because in greed we see things that other people have that we don't seem to have, but we may have things that other people need, but we won't give other people what they need because of our lack. We say, well, because I can't get respect or I can't get love, I'm not going to share what I have, even though other people will suffer as a result. Greed is holding on to things, hoarding things, and yet never being satisfied. That's the common element there. And then the last deadly passion is anger. Anger is a form of envy because, again, we think of what we need and what other people have, and they're not giving it to us. And so we become angry at them. We lash out at them. They're not doing what I want them to do. They're not following my instructions because, after all, I am so important. So you see how this comes down. So all of these deadly passions are ways of dealing with our fear in an unhealthy manner, and it's unhealthy because there is no God. We need to have God in order to have true sanity, true peace, true joy. If we try to take on any of these deadly passions, we're going to lose. We're going to lose because it starts here, and these are fruits of that. We call them wages, let's say, following the phraseology from the book of Galatians. But the center is right here, and it is the real work of the Christian is to overcome these fears, and by stamping these out, these naturally go away. And so in my next video, I will explain the opposite of these. There is hope. Thank you.